Hello, this is Never Mind the Ballots. I'm Harry Cole. We're bringing you a brand new show looking at all things politics with my team from The Sun, with no subject off limits. Coming up, we have our very own Sun cabinet of real-life readers to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. The Sun cabinet meets Sir Keir Starmer. This is Never Mind the Ballots with me, Harry Cole. Still with me is Sir Keir Starmer, and joining me now to give their reaction to our interview, some of the Sun's cabinet. Dr. Bhasha Mukherjee, the Sun's Health Secretary and NHS doctor and trainee GP. Grant Davies, our Transport and Energy Secretary and London cabbie. And Carrie-Anne Booth, the Sun's Education Secretary, former science teacher. Grant, I'm going to start with you. What did you make of Keir's interview?
I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, actually.
Oh, there we go. You going to vote for him?
I'm not sure who I'm going to vote for. And don't ask that. I don't know who I'm going to vote for, to be honest, Keir. I mean, I like the interview. I like the way you said that you're not going to promise things that you can't deliver. Because, and what Harry was saying about the public saying trust, trust. I mean, we've seen so many prime ministers get in and on the run-up say, don't worry, I'm going to sort this out, we'll give you that, we'll get that in. And when they get in power, they say, oh, you know what, we can't do it. And I think people are just really bored of that now. And when you said, we're not going to say we can deliver on this if we know financially we're not going to be able to. I mean, for me, that's a bit refreshing, if I'm honest.
Harry will obviously quiz me about that because he says, well, you said before you'd do it and now you're dropping it because you can't afford it. But I think it's really important at this stage for that very reason, Grant, because we just pick up the whole time when we're knocking on doors, etc., people saying, I quite like what you're saying, but I don't believe anybody's going to deliver anymore. And we have to, and that then leads to people thinking, I won't vote, and disillusioned. So we have to overcome that. So if I've got to take difficult decisions this side of the election and say, even though I might have wanted to do that, and you might have said, I'd quite want that to happen, if we can't afford it, we won't do it. Grant, it's tough, but I'd rather be tough with people now before the election than afterwards.
Yeah. Grant, you had a question about, I think, a topic dear to your heart.
Yeah, it was about the whole net zero and the green stuff. As a London cabbie, Sadiq Khan, who's a Labour mayor, he brought in new rules over the vehicles. We had to buy, and we still can only buy, one vehicle, a green vehicle, and the London taxi now, believe it or not, if I go out and buy one tomorrow, with interest, is over £100,000.
Yeah.
Think of how many trips to Waterloo Station I've got to do to pay that back, right? Then, on the top of that, this year, the Labour mayor extended ULEZ. I had a perfectly good family car. I've got 2 kids and a dog, right, and a wife. And I need a family car. We had a really good car, serviced every year. I had to scrap it. I couldn't afford a new car, so I've had to buy a newer second-hand car. So just in them 2 incidents alone, it's cost me so much money to like buy into this green vision from the Labour mayor. Where do they think working-class people have got this money?
Well, look, I hear you on this because I think it's really important. I do think we need to make the transition. I think we need to go to renewables and clean energy because that's required to, on climate grounds, but it'll also give us lower bills, energy bills. And many businesses are saying to me they can't afford their bills anymore. It'll make sure we've got the next generation of jobs. And also in London and other places, we do have to deal with dirty, polluted air. I've got 2 kids, a 15-year-old boy just doing his GCSEs, a little girl who's 13. I don't give them dirty water, and I don't want them breathing in dirty.
No.
But what I would say, and this is where, so I'm very committed to that. I am with you on the fact we can't just cane motorists. We've got to get this proportionate, which was why I was concerned about ULEZ, because you can't just put all the financial load on yourself and others.
It seems to me it's all stick and no carrot, right?
Yeah.
And even with the extended ULEZ, the Labour mayor, Sadiq Khan, he won't publish the results of the air quality test until after the mayoral election. Now, to me, that really stinks, to be honest, because if we bought into it, we got to know whether he was right or he was wrong.
Yeah, I mean, Grant, what I'd say on that is I have seen some of the medical evidence about the impact. So, I mean, I'm determined we've got to do something about this.
It's the speed of it,
It's the speed. Also, but this is why I'm really interested in what you've got to say, and genuinely, we can't just dump the cost on drivers. We've got to find a better way of doing that, a proportionate way, because otherwise, I mean, as you say, for working class families trying to run a car, it's hard enough as it is. Because all the other bills have gone up. And so we have to find a better way of doing it. And that's a fair challenge, and that's what we're working on, Grant.
And to buy a newer cab and a newer car, when really I didn't want to do both, really.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Financially. But I'm in that situation, so my disposable income has now really shrunk, alarmingly so, just so my wife can take the kids to school and I can go to work.
We're going to have to move on. Grant, I think you have to take it outside with Sir Keir afterwards on that one. Carrie-Anne, what did you make of the interview and our next potential Prime Minister?
I thought your questions were tough.
Good.
Some of those questions.
Well, we don't no softballs here.
Some of
no.
them are personal.
Very personal.
Some of them you even answered. Yeah.
I wouldn't have answered them either. No, the interview was good, and I think it's nice to hear you just speaking in such a refreshing and warm way. And I think the British public need to see more of the warm, smiley, happy Keir, because I think sometimes you don't always come across as warm as you can be. And I think we need to see more of that. And although the election isn't a popularity contest, or it shouldn't be a popularity contest, a lot of voters are going to vote with who they feel a connection to. And I think making that connection with the public is really, really important.
No, I think that's really, it is. And the challenge is always to get it across, because I think probably having been a lawyer, you sort of come with a tough exterior. And I've had to adapt to that because I've been asked a lot about my background, etc. And I know a lot of people know this. My dad worked in a factory, my mum was a nurse, and we didn't have a lot of money. And therefore, I actually know what it's like not to be able to pay your bills. We had some of the phone was cut off and things like that. And I know it's important, however irritated some people get with me saying that, because people need to know, I do actually know what it's like to sit at the kitchen table. And our family had to decide, what are we not going to have then? And in our case, it was the phone, which didn't have mobiles then, by the way. It was a bigger decision than you might think. But I think that, because in the end, really interested in your view on this, I think people want to know, do you understand what it's like for me? And can you make it, have you got a sensible plan to make it better?
Yeah.
And they're pretty important basic questions that people need to have answered.
Carry on. You had a question for Keir on schools.
I've got a few questions. I'm going to go with one from a parental point of view first rather than a teacher point of view. What is Labour's standpoint on fining parents for taking their children on holiday during term time? Because at the end of the day, it hits those on the lowest income and it feels like yet another tax on the poor.
I do passionately believe that children should be in school during term time. I really do. We never take our kids out. I do understand, look at any of the centre parks, for example, the week, as soon as the holiday comes, the price goes up, and you can see why people say, I'm struggling, and I need to take my child out. I get that, I completely get that. And on one level, I can see, I'd be quite sympathetic to it. On the other hand, we have to have our kids in school for the whole time. It is so important for them to have that chance.
So will Labour keep those fines, increase those fines?
We're not planning to get rid of them. We haven't got plans to increase them.
So they're going from 60 to 80
But
currently.
my worry would be that if you started to reduce or get rid of them, it will become the norm to take your children out of school. And I think that's a slippery slope.
But people are doing it anyway. People are doing it anyway.
Yeah.
The holidays are expensive, so just take the kids out anyway. Take the hit with the fine. I'm not sure it does solve the problem. And then where does the money go? Admin and then back into government. It doesn't feed back into the schools. It doesn't help the children. And then those children getting a nice cultural experience and a week out of school can still be just as valid as the week in school they've got. You might have to put some limits on it, not in exam years, but I took my 8-year-old out of school last year, and I think her life was all the richer for it, and our pocket was a little bit fuller because of it as well.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But I just gutturally feel that we should have our kids in school every day, and it's very, very important for them. And that educate. You know this better than anyone. That is the foundation, the base camp for kids as they go forward in life. And if we don't give them every chance, I'm a big champion of state schools. Really worried about the state of state schools, the funding, the teacher sort of retention problems. And what I want more than anything is a society where it doesn't matter whether you go to a state school or a private school.
And it currently
our kids are at state school. I want it to make no difference because the quality of the education you get and the opportunity you get is the same. And so I do think that we've got to keep the rule that you have to be in school on school days. My kids, by the way, would be absolutely with you on this.
Gary, did you have one more quick question for Keir?
My daughter's very quick one, answer.
Yeah, I might swerve and go on a different question, actually. You are a big fan of state schools, as am I. I love the state system. However, if you put the VAT on independent schools, on private schools, I'm worried about the short-term effect, that's going to have a massive impact on state education because you're going to get those sort of middle-class families who can no longer afford to send their children to an independent school. It's going to put extra pressure on the state schools. It's going to push those class sizes up. They're already at breaking point. We're already losing teachers. I'm not saying I'm averse to the VAT on independent schools because I'm a big state school fan, but I'm worried about that immediate knock-on effect.
Yeah, look, I do understand there are families that have 2 or 3 jobs making ends meet trying to pay for their school fees for a private school for their children. I understand that aspiration, but then there are many, many families who've got the same aspiration at state school. The question I've got to answer, Karen, is this. We haven't got enough maths teachers in our secondary state schools. So you've got children in state schools who aren't even getting the basics. Rishi Sunak says he wants maths to 18. Good. Fine. But at the moment, we haven't got enough maths teachers in our state secondaries. So what we do is not a war on private schools. It's simply saying if we're going to fund 6,500 more teachers in subjects like maths, which is what we've got to do, we've got to find the money. Don't think we can put taxes up anymore. People are paying a fortune on tax. Don't think we can cut public services anymore because they're on their knees. So that money, the VAT, will be used to fund those 6,500 teachers so that kids in state secondaries get the teachers they need. Now, these are uncomfortable choices, but that is a choice that I've had to make, which is, in order to fund those teachers in secondary schools, I would make the choice of charging VAT on private school fees.
May I just ask one more question?
Very quick, because we've got to bring in Dr. Bhasha.
How are you going to get those teachers into schools? Because at the moment, you've got over 3/4 of teachers who are wanting to leave education completely, and 1 in 10 teachers wouldn't even recommend their friends and family.
Yeah, we've got to retain the teacher we've got as well.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we've put in place is an sort of enhanced retention scheme for teachers, recognising and allowing them to go up and progress within the system more quickly. I've got quite a number of friends who are teachers, and the burnout is high, and retaining them is important. So that's the other plank of our plan.
Dr. Bhasha, what do you think?
Do you know what, Kia? Before I came here today, I hadn't met you, and I will agree with Carrie-Anne that you've got such a bright smile. You should smile more. And actually, I think the glasses are a really good addition.
Talk us through the new glasses.
They look good. They look good.
Date on the
Almost everybody loves the glasses. My 15-year-old son, but the first day I got them, it was about 2 weeks ago now, maybe a bit more. I put them on. I said, "What do you think?" He said, "I wouldn't go out in those if I were you."
I think you should model the glasses.
His job is to reduce me.
Dr. Bhasha, what was your question for Keir Starmer?
So, as Health Secretary, the debate
Our Health
recently
Secretary.
has been all about the waiting list in NHS. And I know Labour has pledged to drive down the waiting list by creating appointments and clinics out of hours during weekends and on evening shifts. Now, as a junior doctor myself, you've just got to step into a ward to see that we're already heavily understaffed, overworked, the staff are burnt out, that there's been a massive increase since the pandemic of staff absences, sick leave and mental health. How do you think you're going to incentivise this staff to, the same pool of staff, to work extra hours?
Well, we've got to pay them for doing it. I mean, this scheme isn't sort of please work harder. We can't. I mean, my wife works in one of the big London hospitals, and the idea of saying to the staff, you've got to do more on the same wages is not going to land at all. So this comes with extra money for doing it. But we've got to get those waiting. I mean, now 6 million people. That is, I mean, we have a sort of debrief, my wife and I, almost every night. It is having such an impact on the workforce because they know they can't get through it, so we have to do it. But we've got to do other things. I know you're passionate about this because there was a stat I saw today, 7 million people went to A&E because they couldn't get the appointment they wanted with the GP. And as you know, a GP is about £40 for an appointment, A&E is about 400. That's a huge wasted amount of money going on because we haven't got the system set right. So we need to get those waiting lists down. There are other things that we need to do as well. And I think only Labour in the end has the sort of trust to help and reform the NHS. We're very proud of it, 75 years plus. My mum was a nurse, my sister was a nurse, my wife's mum was a doctor. I mean, for our family, it's everything. But our job is to make sure it's there for the next 75 years as well. And that's why I've made it one of the big missions for an incoming
I completely hear your point, Keir, but it's not just about the pay. The staff are overworked and burnt out. And if we're going to take the same pool of staff to work on weekends and essentially pull into their rest time, essentially, there could be patient safety and staff health and safety issues at hand. So what have you got to say about that?
One, it would be fully paid. Two, it would be voluntary. We'd have to work with the staff. We wouldn't want to, nor would it work to force them to do it. But there's a secondary challenge, quite right to me, under what you're saying. We should have been training up more doctors and nurses for many years now to bring them into the system. And so we've got what we call a workforce plan, which is to bring the next generation, because the strain is very heavy. I mean, I think my wife goes through it with me. It was really tough before COVID. It was really tough during COVID. And then now the waiting lists are bearing down. The staff are feeling, undervalued and under-respected. And we have to lift that up. I recognise that. And we'll have to do that by working with the staff.
So, Cabinet, I'm afraid we're out of time. So, Keir, thank you very much. Cabinet, that was brilliant. Even tougher questions than mine, I think.
It's the best cabinet meeting I've had in a long time.
Thank you, Sir Keir. You've heard from the Leader of the Opposition. Next week, we will hear from Britain with our exclusive mega poll revealing the state of the nation. Then, after that, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak will be with us to see if he can change his mind. So, if you see if he can change your mind, rather. That was Never Mind the Ballots. Thank you very much, and good night.